Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Joe Davis, Southern New Hampshire University. Discussion 1-1 for Justice 101. I'm going to walk you through I would suggest you address your discussion questions so that you can get maximum points. Okay? These are not meant to be just rambling questions where you have the opportunity to share all of your random thoughts. They're very, very focused. So you have to read and make sure that you understand the entire question. So for this particular assignment in Module 1, you need to look at Figure 1-1, which is a flow chart of the criminal justice process. You can find that on page 9 of the ebook or page 9 of the print version of the textbook. It's going to talk about 3 branches of the criminal justice system, and that's law enforcement, courts, and corrections. There are 5 parts to the discussion question for you to answer in your initial post, okay? 5 parts. When we break those, and there are also 2 then responses for your peers. So even your responses have to be very specific. So let's take a look at the first question, and it says, what is each branch responsible for? Well, if you go to page 8 and you look under entry into the system, you'll see that law enforcement is listed. Responsible detecting crime violators, bringing these individuals into the system. Detecting crime is often a partnership between the police and the public. Law enforcement must rely on the public to report crime, cooperate as witnesses, and work with law enforcement in crime prevention programs. Booking, when you get arrested and you get quote-unquote booked, that's the transition point to determine whether the accused will be further processed by the criminal justice system. If you're not booked, then you're not into the system. Okay, now booking's a little misleading here. Yes, if you get a citation, especially for a misdemeanor, that puts you in the system. Okay. If we look at the rest of it, for courts, it's on page 8 where it says prosecution and pretrial services. In the next stage of the sequence of events, the government must decide whether the evidence is sufficient to pursue prosecution. Okay, must ensure that due process rights of the defendant are protected, and the decision to move the accused from booking to prosecution is decided by a collaboration between law enforcement officials and officials in the prosecutor's office. Okay. When an officer makes an arrest or writes a crime report and the detectives do follow-up investigation and they go out and arrest someone, they get a warrant, whatever it is, a complaint, then that is a collaborative process within the department, within police. But at some point, the court liaison officer is going to do what we used to call walk it to the DA, and that is someone from the police department is going to take the case to the prosecuting attorney, the city attorney, the district attorney, whoever's appropriate. Okay, and that court liaison officer in a larger agency, because he or she will take a dozen, 15, 20 cases, whatever it is, in one time, makes their pitch, and that's where that cooperation, collaboration comes into effect, because the district attorney is going to look for all the things listed, but they also want to win. Okay, and the police want a conviction too, but they want their guy or gal, their suspect, to go into the process. All right, when we talk about due process, I do want to take just a moment and tell you, I don't know how many of you have ever been Mirandized for murdering somebody, but I was as a young deputy in the county jail. I didn't touch the inmate, but they had a witness that said, oh, Deputy Davis murdered this guy. I got to tell you, the Constitution is a wonderful document, and due process is something we should fight and die. Oh, that's right. We do fight and die to save that. I didn't do it. I invoked Miranda. Further investigation, once we got it away from kind of a questionable detective, I didn't do anything wrong. Okay, so due process and the Constitution are our greatest protections. Anyway, all right, let's go on to corrections. What's next? If they're found guilty, the judge is going to sentence them, and then they're going to send them to corrections. Now that is going to be based on a pre-investigation pre-sentence investigation written by a probation officer. Probation is part of the corrections system, and then they'll decide whether the defendant goes to to jail. They're going to go to a correctional facility, but that may be, for a juvenile, a probation run facility. Okay, so that's the next step, and that's where the probation officer doing the pre-sentence investigation goes back and looks at background, and again the collaboration of the police appears, because they can say, oh yeah, we've tried to convict him 42 times. Okay, How do they interact with each other? Whoops, I went too far too fast. The decision to move the accused from booking to prosecution is decided by a collaboration. Okay. Between the courts and corrections, if found guilty, they're going to get a pre-sentence report by corrections given to the courts. They're actually private consultants that will do that also. And then how do each of these pieces of the system work to complement each other? Well, they're on page 3. It tells you the due process protections, the goals of the criminal justice system, which may be retribution and it may be rehabilitation. We're going to work for the order of maintenance, and then a system of social controls. Those things should ring a bell to you, but you can read more about those. Okay. Question number 4 is what happens if one branch of the system were broken? This is an opinion question, and quite frankly, this is where you have to demonstrate your critical thinking and analytical skills based on the readings in the book and what's been written ahead in questions 1 through 3. All right, so think about it. What would happen if one branch of the system were broken? Now, someone wrote about the courts being broken because they make decisions that let criminals go. That's not broken, okay? Because you could equally argue then the broken part of the system is the police that violated the Constitution. So you see the difficulty you have with that? Broken is where there is a crooked prosecuting attorney. There are crooked cops, where there are crooked judges that take bribe. That would be broken. All right. The fact that you don't like decisions, and I emphasize that because I want you to learn to develop your critical thinking skills. All right, describe how the malfunction of one criminal justice system branch would affect the operation of the other two. Once again, it is a critical thinking, analytical opinion question. And it has to, and I would say here is a most simple example. The police department decides to do a gang sweep. They have warrants and they're going to go out and arrest all the gang members they can. And by gosh, they arrest 100 gang members and they put them in buses and then they show up at the county jail. But nobody told the county jail that they were coming with 100 inmates, and the county jail usually only books 25 people a night. Okay. Once they get them all booked, then the next morning or in 2 days, the gang members are all going to get to go to court. Well, that same whoosh of mass is going to arrive at the courthouse. It'll impact transportation. So those would be, that would be a very, very simple example. Now, using the example of corruption, where you have crooked police officers, where you have corrupt prosecuting attorneys that either do or don't want to prosecute or prosecute when there isn't reason to, and then of course judges that rule, not that you don't like the opinion again, but that they literally let people off. I can think of a case here in California where a Stanford University student was convicted of rape and the judge gave him no time in custody because he said it was the penalty was the mark on his lifetime and his career and all those things. I got to tell you that's not the role of judge, and to me that would be a malfunction, okay, where everything went according to the book, and all of a sudden a judge makes a decision that's not an opinion or an evaluation of the Constitution. It's just a bad decision in my view. Okay, so now those are the 5 questions in a big hurry for you, but you need to go through all of this. All right, now when you reply to your peers, it has to be very specific. In the welcome tape I said in the reply you get, "Hi Joe, gosh, I really agreed, you did a great job on that post. I've never seen a flow chart with so much good information." No, that has nothing to do with your required. This is required. Do you think one part of the system is more important than the other? Is law enforcement more important than corrections and courts? Courts more important? So on and so forth. And obviously you can't just say law enforcement. You'll get a note back from me that says, why? Can you give me 3 reasons? You have 2 reasons? Okay. You need to explain your answer. This is just like sitting in a classroom, and If we were in there and I was your professor in front of the room, and someone, we looked at this question and someone said, well, I think it's law enforcement. And then the room goes quiet, I would say, and why do you think that? Okay. The next is it possible for one part of the system to change without influencing the other systems? Yes and no. They can change, but what would be the impacts become what it is. Remember, so much of what we do is public power, what the criminal justice system does, I should say, is established by public policy by politicians. So if we look at the courts, if we look at corrections, and we say, my gosh, it's a revolving door, it's nothing but recidivism. Okay, what did the state legislature, through policy and budget, do for rehabilitation? Are we still treating drug offenders as criminals instead of a medical issue of addiction? Illiteracy, no job training. Now, if we're not going to have rehabilitation, that's fine. But you can't really blame the California Department of Corrections for that when it's all established by the California State Legislature. I hope that makes sense to you. Okay? If you have trouble, let me know. We can talk on the phone, exchange emails, text. We can use joinme.com and Skype, of course. All right? Any questions, let me know. Keep those cards and letters coming.